And welcome into Brainstorming America. I forgot who I was and where we are. I'm Ken Rollins, and we're here with John Merrill, and we're talking about things that we hope that are of interest to you, and we kind of do things a little bit more in detail here. And speaking of that, by the way, good to see you, brother.
Thank you, Ken. Always good to be back.
You're a traveling man, hard. Nobody ever gets you. You're a moving target. Nobody can ever hit you. So and keep that up, because the world needs more John Merrills.
Thank you, brother.
Let's go to a subject that's been in the news. That's every time you turn your TV on, it's on there about. But before you go, I want to say one thing about it. Hunter Biden. Y'all tired of hearing about him? I bet you are. But it's really a serious thing, because the connections with him and his father could lead us into some bad situation. Just think of where we are with Ukraine.
And of course, just to remind the viewers that Hunter Biden is the second child and the second son of President Joseph R. Biden. Hunter was a brother to Beau Biden, who was named for his father, who was the Attorney General of Delaware, who actually died of a brain tumor. And Hunter has been infamous, and there's been a number of things that have distracted the president, distracted the country from the news at hand because of his activities with foreign countries. Pick back where you were with Ukraine.
Well, I'm going to go, you went to something else. After Beau died of a brain cancer, Hunter tackled his wife. Oh yeah, Hunter jumped on there like a dog on a pork chop. He was waiting in the wings for that widow of his brother. Sorry, no good. Anyhow, Hunter Biden has done some things, him and his father, that this is substantiated with emails and witnesses. There's a lot of whistleblowers out there that have testified. And keep in mind, these whistleblowers are under oath, and they can perjure themselves. And if they perjure themselves, they're going to jail. So this is serious business, the things that's being stated. And if the president has taken money from the Chinese government, the Ukrainian government, or any of those places that the accusations are there, we're in bad trouble, because any decision he makes regarding those countries could be faulted back to where we could be in a treasonous situation. So, Hunter Biden, what's your take on it?
Well, I think Hunter's situation is very unfortunate. I think there's a number of incidences that have occurred over his lifetime that have resulted in him becoming the man that he is today. And I think that in many, many ways, it's very unfortunate. Of course, thinking back to he and Beau being with his mom, with their sister, when she had a wreck right before Christmas in 1972, when she was killed in that accident, and their sister was killed. And then Hunter and Beau had to be in the hospital at that particular time for several weeks, right after President Biden had been elected to the Senate in his very first term, and he actually wondered whether or not he needed to stay in the United States Senate. He hadn't even taken office yet. He was just 29 years old when this occurred, but he was able to overcome that. But because of that, and then growing up in a family where your dad is a United States Senator, and then for the next 4 or 5 years, you don't have a mom, you have an aunt that's helping live with you to help raise you. I know that they had a life of privilege and a life of understanding, but I think sometimes some things have happened with Hunter that have actually led him down a path that was a destructive path. And so there needs to be some level of empathy there. But of course, when you're talking about activities that involve the safety and security of the United States of America, it raises a whole nother level. And we have to make sure that anything that he has done that's put our nation in jeopardy or put the president in a vulnerable position needs to be dealt with just like it would any other individual, whether you are the son of the president or not.
Yeah, well, it's anytime you're in a position like that, even when you were Secretary of State, if you were giving a company, say, inside information to bid on a contract or something, you would be in the same situation.
Absolutely.
You know all about the ethics and deal
Absolutely.
with that stuff. and that's where I'm at on him. But I know a little bit of something I can't talk about here regarding Hunter before all this happened that I'll share with you off the air. But he's not. It's like somebody was saying, well, he was a drug addict. Okay, so he's a drug addict. So I'm a drug addict. So I went and bought me a pistol, and I didn't have to do what my daddy said I got to do. I got to have a background check. I didn't have to do that because I'm Biden. I don't have to do what my daddy is standing at the podium yelling and shaking his finger at America about every time there's a shooting. That you must be a background check. You must say that you cannot own a weapon if you're under drugs. All that kind of thing he got away with. And so I think it's going to come, we're going to see more. If you don't like hearing the name Hunter Biden, forget it. You're just about to hear more of it. But let's go to something else, weaponizing the DOJ.
Well, before we do that, I think one of the main reasons that you wanted to bring up the situation about Hunter was another incident that was reported in the media about cocaine being in the White House. And that happened over the 4th of July holiday period. And of course, there had been no evidence of any foreign or illegal substance like cocaine being in that particular location. And then it was reported that that had occurred, and then it was indicated that Hunter had made a trip to the White House at that time over that particular holiday weekend. And so just another black eye for the president and another concern for the public about what is actually being done in the White House related to Hunter and his activities. Very, very disturbing, very, very disconcerting. We'll see you back here in just a couple of minutes. Thanks for joining us again this week on Brainstorming America.
And welcome back to Brainstorming America. Ken Rollins here with John Merrill. And John, when we went to a break, we were talking about Hunter Biden, and I think we gave enough of that. So I want to, we were talking about did we talk about the weaponizing of the DOJ?
No, sir.
Because we are in trouble right there.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go with that subject.
Well, that's a major problem, Ken, because what you hope is that whenever an instrument of the United States government is being used, it's being used to advance the safety and security of the republic. And the Department of Justice is no exception. Unfortunately, what we have seen, and it's not the first time in the republic that this has happened, it happened with J. Edgar Hoover, it happened with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, happened against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it happened against Robert Kennedy, other tapes that were put together on President John F. Kennedy. J. Edgar Hoover was notorious for using the Bureau for his personal use. But over the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, it appeared that we had gotten away from some of those things, but now it's been revealed that there are other things that have been done with the Bureau. President Trump complained about some of those things. He said that the Bureau and the DOJ was actually being weaponized against him. Many people did not believe him, and now evidence has been introduced to show that that indeed has been the case. And I think it's important for us to stand up and to push back so that that doesn't happen, because if it can happen to the President of the United States, it can happen to any individual who is a member of the Republic.
Well, that was, I got something further down on my list that ties in with that. It's like the double standards for justice, that you got X number of dollars and I got X number of dollars, and your dollars get you one kind of justice and my dollars get me one kind of justice. And it seems to be that if you go back from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama to, what was the Attorney General I mentioned a while ago? Eric Holder, and then look at the charges that they're throwing at Trump, and then just go look at what, with Trump right now. Sure, he had the papers at Mar-a-Lago, but look how many, like 18 or 19 different places Biden's got them. And yet Trump is going on trial and Biden is floating along. I don't care president or not, he's still, they keep saying nobody's above the law. Well, how can you pursue and prosecute one person for one same thing that you're letting another slide by. And I think America sees it, and I think they're going to react to it. I hope they do, because it's wrong to allow anybody, including our president, if it's Donald Trump, to get away and charge somebody else for the same thing. That's just wrong, and it's illegal. And that's where the weaponization goes. It should be a blind lady with scales of justice.
That's right.
That doesn't see rich, poor, black, or white.
That's correct.
So that got me upset. Let me go into something real quick.
Yes, sir.
How that reapportionment lawsuit going?
Well, as you know, I was the lead defendant in that lawsuit until September from the time that it was filed, and then the hearing that took place in October. And then after I left office in January of this year, then I was replaced as the lead defendant by the current Secretary of State. And we had done an exceptional job of preparing the case. Actually, I have been sued 28 times as the Secretary of State, and 28-0, roll tide. I also think it's important for you to know that this was the last one that had not been fully adjudicated, but it was, and the Supreme Court ruled against Secretary of State Wes Allen and the state of Alabama, and said that there needed to be 2 majority-minority districts created in the state of Alabama to properly recognize the individuals who populate our state directly proportional to consistent population numbers related to African Americans, Caucasians, and others. And I think it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for the Alabama legislature to draw 2 congressional districts that will be majority and minority districts, because even though there's 26% population in the state of African Americans, 69% population reflects a white majority in the state, and then the other amount with Native Americans, Mexican Americans, folks that have moved in here and become members of the Alabama citizenry. I think it's important to recognize that people can live wherever they choose to live. And so it's very difficult to find a majority-minority district to be created other than one that's already created, which many people already say has been gerrymandered. So this is going to be a tough assignment for the Alabama legislature. They will be in session from July the 17th to July the 21st to consider that. The documentation has got to be presented back to the Attorney General by July 21. So this is going to be an enormous task. It's going to be very interesting to see how it's resolved in Montgomery.
Imagine comparison Tuskegee with Tuscaloosa. You get that?
I do. And of course, having the black belt involved is important, but it's also important to remember that we have pockets of African American population that are pretty dense in the Madison County area up near Huntsville. Obviously, Jefferson County is a majority-minority county. We also have 13 other counties in the state that are majority-minority counties, and many of those are in the black belt when you're talking about Tuscaloosa, and then Pickens County down to Hale, Perry, Dallas, Sumter, all the way down to Choctaw, and then going left as you move over toward Montgomery, and then another heavy pocket down in Mobile County. So for them to be able to draw the lines consistently, coherently, and without doing it in a gerrymandered way is going to take a very, very, very intense effort on behalf of the Alabama legislature. Speaking of intense efforts, we hope that you'll take an intense break right now and join us again in about a minute and a half for the last segment of Brainstorming America.
Welcome back to Brainstorming America. Ken Rollins, and sitting here with John Merrill. And John, the reason we have him on here, he don't know that, but we're sucking his brain dry. We get so much. There's nobody in the state of Alabama that I know has got as much information as this guy, and it's correct information. And I learned that a long time ago. If I wanted the facts, nothing but the facts, call John. And Jeff, you agree with that? I got a thumbs up, so you can't hear that when he flips that thumb, but I got a thumbs up. So let's go to somebody I skipped over as a special session. What's going on with that?
Well, the special session has been called by Governor Ivey strictly to concentrate on the reapportionment lawsuit that was just issued a ruling from the Supreme Court of the United States. And because of the way special sessions work in the state of Alabama, no other legislation can be introduced that's not a part of the call. And the governor has indicated that the call consists of strictly congressional reapportionment. Not legislative reapportionment, but congressional reapportionment for the 7 districts in the state of Alabama. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works. And it should also be noted that one of the state senators from Baldwin County has indicated that he has an interest in having something else come up as a part of the call, which will require 2/3 of the vote of both chambers in order to have that considered. And that's an issue related to the Department of Archives and History and an LBGQT effort that was established by the Archives and History team to try to educate Alabamians on that particular issue. But State Senator Chris Elliott from District 35 in Baldwin County has indicated that that will be a part of the conversation when the legislature convenes in the special called session.
So he's wanting the LGBT plus QA 376 to be something that's going to shoved on it. Yeah. Lord forgive me. I'm not even going to go there. Let's see. The
bigger point is there's going to be a number of maps that are going to be introduced by the Alabama legislature for consideration with both chambers to determine where those congressional district lines should be for the 7 congressional districts. And it's going to be extraordinarily difficult for 2 of those districts to be majority-minority districts, which will be a difficult task for them. If that indeed is not a strong case that has been made, there's a strong possibility that Alabama could end up with 7 white Republicans representing our state in Washington instead of having 1 Democrat or perhaps 2 Democrats in Washington as a part of the congressional delegation. So this is a very dicey situation, one that we encourage you to take note of as it takes place in Montgomery in near days.
And to weigh in on when you feel the need to, because that's something that I know personally, that if you want to get your senator's attention, get their office number, get their cell number, get their information, go on there and go live on computer when they are in the session, pull up the Alabama legislature and watch it live and see what they're saying. I had a senator that had a piece of legislation that involved me and all the veterans of Alabama, and I was watching the session that evening, and when I called his cell number, he stepped away from asked Senator Wagner to hold his place while he stepped away, because I could see his phone was vibrating or something was distracting him in his back pocket. And he stepped away and then called me immediately and told me to back off, that he was working on it. And in that voice, he said that, to back off. So I backed off for a few minutes, then I called him again. But anyhow, he called me later. We've removed the legislation, so basically a hush. But it works, folks. It works if you to get involved. And that covers that.
It does, but we also need to make sure that the viewers know that basically we only have 3 members of Congress in Alabama that are going to be protected outside of this reapportionment effort. You're going to see very few changes made in Dale Strong's district. He represents District 5, which is Madison, Limestone, Jackson counties. You're going to see very few changes that are going to be made in Congressional District 4, which is Congressman Robert Adderholt, who's the dean of our delegation. His district runs all the way from the Mississippi line to the Georgia line. It comes all the way over to Etowah County and up against Cherokee County. Mike Rogers is the only other person who represents the 3rd Congressional District who represents this particular area where we are, and he's the 2nd longest serving member of the Alabama Congressional Delegation, but his district will also be minimally impacted. So the other members are all out there for fair game. Congressman Gary Palmer in Jefferson County, Congresswoman Terry Sewell in Jefferson County, Congressman Barry Moore down in Enterprise, and Congressman Jerry Carl down in Mobile. So it's going to be very interesting to watch and see the political dynamics of the interaction of the delegation as they interface with each other and the members of the Alabama delegation whenever they are having this conversation with the members of the Alabama legislature.
Especially when you got somebody like Rogers that's the head of the Homeland Security now, that they're head of
and Armed Services.
Yeah.
And he's the first person, Mike Rogers is the first person in the history of Alabama to serve as the chairman of the Department of Armed Services in the Congress.
Yeah, having Anastar Depot and Fort Rooker or Fort Novosel. It's hard to say that now, but do you know who Novosel is?
No, sir.
My friend, my buddy, me and Eli's buddy.
Yes, sir.
Because he was short and Eli was short.
Yes, sir.
But he was a great guy. He's a Medal of Honor recipient. He's who they named Fort Rooker after. And it used to be Fort Benning. It's Fort Moore.
Yes, sir.
After mine, Eli's buddy. Not Eli's buddy. That General Moore was our friend, dear friend.
Yes, sir.
We did 4 hours on this station right here with him. We got a minute left. Let's see. We're going to talk about, I want to talk about China and the effect that it has with the everyday folks out here that's watching us, that has property or may live near a place that's property is for sale, and let them know that one of the biggest property owners in the United States is a place called China. So we want to address that. So.
Well, and I'll tell you, Ken, I really think one of the things that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to save China for another day, because that is such a wide and broad subject that many people are interested in, and they should be, because the very future of the Republic relies on how we handle our relationship with China. So we'll talk more about that next time. Thank you for joining us again this week on Brainstorming America.